Hello, hello, hello. But as usual, I start with this uh, scheme of the plan of the old city of Jerusalem. And obviously, we're focusing on the Temple Mount, which kind of stands out. It doesn't belong actually to a certain quarter. I mean, there are four quarters, as you can see, but the Temple Mount is different. And the Temple Mount is um, under the control of Waqf of the Muslim organization based in Jordan, and they are in charge of all the Muslim religious sites. And Temple Mount, being the home of Al-Aqsa Mosque and Dome of the Rock, is considered the third important site in Islam in the world. So there's a lot to talk about. But obviously, the Temple Mount is it's called the Temple Mount because there had been the temples of the Jewish temples, two temples before their destruction. And on these tours, we are focusing on archaeology of the Temple Mount. And even though archaeological excavations are not allowed by WAF, it doesn't mean there's no archaeology, it doesn't mean there's no history, and it doesn't mean there's no proof to the existence of the temples. Uh, this is not true, and we have lots of archaeology around surrounding the Temple Mount as well, and there is a lot also available well with regards to the Temple Mount itself. We have spoken a lot about some discoveries. I'll briefly sum them up for you, what we have covered, and we will carry on from that on. So first and foremost, this is the Western Wall Plaza, and this area, well, is considered the open air synagogue for Jews, but anyone can visit. You just need to pass through the security gate, and this is it. But also, if you need to go to the Temple Mount and you're not a Muslim, well, even if you are an atheist, well, it doesn't really matter. Even if you are, I don't know, a Buddhist, it doesn't matter what you need to do. You just need to enter only through one gate. That is the Mughrabi gate. So you see that kind of a elevated construction, like a wooden corridor. So this is the Mughrabi gate. Well, the gate is well, it's from the times of the Mughrabi quarter, the Moroccan quarter that once had been standing in this area. And well, this is basically it. You see the gate is elevated, and well, that's the gate through which you would enter if you are not a Muslim. On a certain day, normally 5 days a week, there are several hours in the morning and also in the afternoon, but it's always best to double check. It's always best to check, well, I would say on the eve of your possible visit because it varies and many things are in Israel are so unpredictable. So obviously all these things need to be taken into consideration. Okay, so the Temple Mount, right? So what we need to understand is that the other name is Mount Moriah, and originally it is just a mount. It's just a mountain, way smaller than it looks nowadays. And this is where many things are believed to have happened, including the binding of Isaac. There is a big stone, the kind of the foundation stone, the foundation stone. And this is where Solomon built the first temple in around 980 BCE. And the temple was there was given a platform right above the stone, and the temple was of a certain size. We know it exactly from further sources, not from the times of Solomon, but we will talk about the sources later on. We have some descriptions. However, we don't know what the temple actually looked. We don't have illustrations of that times, but we have quite detailed descriptions, obviously. And the Solomon's temple would be standing till their destruction in 586. When Jews were taken to Babylonian exile, the temple was destroyed. Then 50 years later, Jews were allowed to come back. And then by 515, 516, the second temple built by Zerubbabel and Yeshua was rebuilt. well, it was built, the second temple, and up until its extension and expansion by Herod in the first century BCE. That's basically what it looked like. So what we're looking now is the expansion done at the times of Herod. So the gray walls, this is the times of Herod the Great. So he almost doubled the size of Mount Moriah. So originally Mount Moriah was basically of the size of this yellow square, right? And so the yellow color is the color of extent of what Solomon Temple actually was. Then there were further on extensions that we will also mention briefly. But the way the Temple Mount looks nowadays, its layout, its dimensions, this is from the first century BCE, from Herodian period. So this is quite important to remember. What we're looking at is, well, most of the illustrations I'm using, they are provided in the book by Leon Rittmeyer. I would say one of the best leading archaeologists of everything with regards to the Temple Mount. And also Holy Land website, Median Institute, and a few more illustrations. That's I would say, the most reliable sources that, well, me, myself, and my colleagues are using. Okay. Yeah, so that's basically what we see. So we see the walls, and we see what's on the Temple Mount itself. And as you can see, it's way bigger. It's way more, I would say, opulent than what was built by Zerubbabel and even what was built by Solomon. That was the idea of Herod, basically. So he is known in the Middle East. He's known as the great builder. So we have entered through the Mograbi Gate. We passed the security check. We're making sure that we are, well, we comply with the dress code. No open shoulders, no short skirts, no shirts for men as well. But even if you are dressed inappropriately, you will be given some covers. So don't worry, they're not letting you go away. They're not pushing you away in case you're not dressed properly. Well, we're passing by the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and as of 2000, non-Muslims are not allowed to enter. And we just have to be happy with all the photos we have online. There are a lot of them, so it's kind of okay. Since I'm not a Muslim, I wasn't allowed to film also inside, but everything outside, I was able to film freely, and I felt totally safe. It was 7 in the morning this August, maybe. Well, maybe it was early September. I don't remember, to be honest. So it was okay. Now, we are not going into details about the archaeological discoveries made in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We've already talked about it for several tours, but in a nutshell, no archaeological excavations whatsoever. What we know is that in the end of the 1920s, there was an earthquake that destroyed the roof. And also, it was decided, along with the repair works of the roof of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, it was also decided to just secure the columns that supporting, and the ceiling. And when these works were carried out, it happened during the times of the British Mandate period, which started in 1917 and finished in 1948. With the subsequent establishment of the modern state of Israel. And well, there were several, I would say, scholars and archaeologists that oversaw the process. They did not conduct excavations. They just look at what had been dug out, and they were dug out underground passageways from the times of Herod. We know that by the archaeology, we know that. I mean, we know it by the design, by the architecture. So it was definitely Roman architecture over there. Then there was also discovered mosaics, different patterns, possibly Byzantine period, but we will talk about it as well. And also they were even found some interesting steps, divided steps that remind, well, further investigation was needed, obviously, but it's all filled up. But those divided steps were very similar to mikvaot, which are the spiritual purification baths used by Jews. Well, and obviously that was important to purify before coming to the temple as well. So that's quite interesting. Obviously, well, Alexa Mosque as well as the Dome of the Rock were built after, well, much later. So we are talking here. So the second temple built by Herod, this was the kind of the revamping of the second temple from 515, right? So first century BCE, Herod rebuilt it. 70 AD, 70 Common Era, Romans destroy the temple, and by 135 Common Era, nothing is left of Jerusalem. It's rebuilt into a pagan city. And then in the Byzantine period, we believe that not much actually was on the Temple Mount itself. It is believed that during the Byzantine period, the hub of life and the center of the Christian life revolved around the Holy Sepulchre Church, which is kind of logical because this is the holiest place for Christians all over the world. So that's what we think. However, well, because there was some mosaics discovered during the repair works of Alexa Mosque, they resembled some Byzantine mosaics, and who knows, maybe there has been something built on the Temple Mount, but most scholars believe that in a nutshell, at least, it was, I would say, kind of really neglected area during the Byzantine period. But then 638, Muslim conquest of Jerusalem, and by the end of 600, like 691, the Dome of the Rock was constructed, and well, Al-Aqsa Mosque. First, it was obviously wooden, and but anyway, so in 701, Al-Aqsa Mosque was built. Well, that's just in a nutshell, and it will be standing there up until, I mean, the Alexa Mosque has been here ever since. However, we need to talk about the other periods as well, such as the Crusader period, which put to an end the first Muslim period that lasted from 638 till 1099, when the Crusaders invaded Jerusalem. And so what they did to the Temple Mount, they did not destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque or the Dome of the Rock, but they obviously converted them. So they, well, here you see the interesting construction. This is basically, well, obviously it's not accurate. It's not archaeologically accurate. It's not architecturally accurate. So it's called Templo Solomoni. Basically, they turned Al-Aqsa Mosque into, well, into their headquarters, into the Crusader Knights headquarters. They had their rooms, they had hospitals, they had all the rooms they needed, you know, warehouses, just, you know, the life was there. And well, the Solomon Temple, basically, because obviously the Crusaders being Christians, it was important that this place was related to Jews because Jesus was Jewish, so they remembered all this history with regards to Solomon Temple and everything. So they basically called the Temple Mount the Temple Solomon, but well, it didn't really matter to them much if it had been at some point Jewish, because the Crusaders did not, especially in the beginning, they didn't let anyone but Christians live in the old city of Jerusalem, and let alone visiting the Temple Mount. Later on, when Crusaders realized that well, that Jerusalem turned into a very desolate, quiet, and deserted city, they realized that encouraging some trade and some pilgrims could be a good idea. So eventually they started letting minorities visit and settle, come for commercial purposes. But that's, this is like, I would say, fraction of how diverse and populated Jerusalem had been before those times. And so now that we have approached the Dome of the Rock, well, this is the coin from the Templar Knights. Sorry, it's the seal. It's not the coin, it's the seal. This is, by the way, the illustration from Wikipedia. So you see, this is the Dome of the Rock. on the rivers, and it has a cross there. So they turned the Dome of the Rock into a church. Yes. Yeah, but they did not destroy it. So basically, these are the revampings of some sort, but at least, but the building is still from the seventh, early eighth century. That's what we have. Just to remind you what the Dome of the Rock is. So this is the monument. Um, it's well, it's a mosque, but it's also a shrine. So, but it's yes to commemorate this night journey of Prophet Muhammad to a distant mosque, later on identified as Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. So where Muhammad ascended to heaven and got some revelations from uh, uh, from God, and among those revelations would be the praying, the 5 times prayer. So that's the story. Just as a quick reminder, that's basically it. I like to add a lot of old photographs for you to see what the area looked at different periods. It looked pretty much the same. However, the dome of the rock wasn't actually golden. It was gilded in the 20th century, thanks to the donations of the Jordanian king. Now, what is there in the dome of the rock? So remember, I told you it's more like a shrine. However, it does serve as a mosque, but it's more a shrine. It's more of a shrine to the rock, to the Sahra, so to the foundation stone. There, this is basically the upper part of the Mount Moriah, the bedrock on which, according to the story, the binding of Isaac took place. And Lynn Rittmeyer, so Rittmeyer, so that's the big scholar that I rely on whose research I rely a lot, and my colleagues as well, my teachers as well. So he believes that, well, there are several indentations that are too accurate and they are not just natural weathering. There must have been something standing on that stone at some point, and it was cut out. It's not the natural indentation. It's not. It just could not. It's just too regular and two straight lines. Uh, so and. According to Lynn Rittmeyer, it must have been the Ark of the Covenant. Well, obviously, it's not signed. There's no blueprints left for us, obviously, by Solomon. Well, but it sounds very possible. What else do we have in the Dome of the Rock? Well, Linnet Meyer was not allowed, obviously, to conduct any excavations, but he was allowed to stay and, observe and study, like just doing this visual survey of the archaeology and architecture. And he was able to identify a couple of stones that don't belong to the uh, the construction of the Dome of the Rock. For example, this is all taken from Lynn Wittmeyer's works. Um, well, it is believed that that stone over there is from the Second Temple period. Well, not the first temple, but the Second Temple period. But we know that the Second Temple was built exactly on the same spot where the first temple used to be anyway. And Herodian Temple was just took a much bigger territory as just for the Temple Mount, but it's still the same place. There is also the Well of Souls, kind of a cave, right, under the rock, and we visited it last time. I mean, with photos because we cannot. I mean, as a non-Muslim, I cannot enter. But there are some photographs, so it is there for sure. These are photos taken from Wikipedia. It's you can easily Google for it. There are some illustrations taken at different times. And the most amazing thing is that when in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, they were changing the carpets, it was revealed. So the beautiful, interesting mosaic was revealed. The mosaic, unlike the one discovered in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that's what I'm talking about. well, it didn't look like any Byzantine period, Byzantine culture mosaic. No, it just looked something very different. And it doesn't look modern. Well, since no analysis was carried out whatsoever, there's no way to date it, obviously. But later on we are going to remember these for sure. Uh, Also, last time, so yes, these are photos from the internet, so you can find them in open access, and it's clear that this mosaic would definitely go further. So it at some point just had been somehow, I don't know, worn or whatever. So no idea. So we don't know. I mean, here it kind of looks finished, but obviously, probably it should continue under the carpet, right? So I don't know actually how big it is, but so, and this episode, I also showed you. I filmed it at some point. This mosaic you can find at the entrance to the City of David, and we did a tour of the City of David together. The City of David is actually the oldest part of Jerusalem, down to the south from the Temple Mount, basically. I'm not even going to repeat myself, but the old city of Jerusalem is not really that old. The oldest part of Jerusalem is below the Temple Mount, basically. So there at the entrance, you see this interesting mosaic. It's modern. It was created by modern masons, but it looks very similar to the mosaic discovered in the Well of Souls, right? In that cave under the Sahra, under the foundation stone. Okay, so this is the Dome of the Rock, the Dome of Chain as well. I briefly mentioned the Dome of Chain, and I cannot but show you the beautiful designs, just the beautiful architecture of the both domes. What can I say? I mean, it is breathtaking. It is gorgeous. So the Gate of Chain, well, as I told you, there was a tradition, I believe, that at that point, at some point at this area was hanging a chain, and only the righteous person, only the one person that had the right intentions and was telling the truth could break that chain. And all the liars and people with some agenda, they could not break that chain. That's the tradition to which the Gate of Chain is addressing. However, there is also a the Qibla. So what we're looking at. So in every mosque, there is a wall, a special wall. Well, which faces Mecca, right? And over here, it is this side to the south, basically. And so this is the Qibla, the sacred wall, where every Muslim is actually addressing, standing to and praying towards, because this shows you the direction of Mecca, so the holiest site for Muslims. That's basically it. And well, there's also this, I would say, a wrong theory about the chain. I mentioned it last time. So as we are just observing the beautiful tiles and just the decorations, I'm going to briefly mention it that, well, even some Muslims who are not, I would say, um, too curious about the archaeology and the history of the Temple Mount. So they believe that this is where Muhammad chained, or well, left his horse, a winged horse like Barak, but this is not the case. Now we need to go down, and last time I took you down with this to the steps. I took you to the Eastern Gate. And as you see, what I'm doing, I'm basically covering, given some, well, old information and also adding something else because there's no way you can remember everything. So the Eastern Gate, as you know, it's sealed now, and the space in the Eastern Gate is used as a praying space. So it's still a mosque. The Eastern Gate or the Golden Gate. Let's have a look again at this map of all this of the old city. You see the Golden Gate, and you see the Temple Mount. So the eastern side, the eastern wall of the Temple Mount, actually coincide with, well, part of it is also part of the old Jerusalem wall. You see that. So the modern walls of the old city of Jerusalem only date back to the Ottoman period, 1530s. However, when it gets to the eastern wall, the part of the wall that, well, that goes through the Temple Mount, this is actually the Temple Mount wall. And it was only briefly, I would say it was only partially rebuilt. And there you can find a lot of interesting archaeology, including, and also architecture from the previous periods, from the Second Temple period and even the First Temple period. So I just thought it was important to remind you of that. And that's what it looks like from the other side. Below is the Kidron Valley, and the photo was taken from the Mount of Olives. And yes, next to the Eastern Gate are it's this Muslim cemetery basically that was placed here in the Ottoman period, just not to let the false messiahs, believed by Islam, that is the Jewish Messiah or Jesus in Christianity, to come through the Golden Gate or the Eastern Gate. I'm not going into details. So Linwood Mayer, after the careful observations, was able to find, just by looking at the masonry, he was able to identify that even some First Temple period masonry, the Second Temple period masonry was also discovered. We will be talking about it as well. And how did he identify it? Just by special marks called bosses, called wasp, but we're getting to that. I just want you to see this details covered in colored in pink. So these are the First Temple period architectural elements. We know that, well, thanks to the special marks that were left by the Masons at that period. It doesn't even look Herodian. Obviously, there are a lot of Herodian stones, but we will discuss the difference in the architecture, in the shape of the Herodian and the First Temple period stones. But so it's not surprising that the Eastern Wall still has a lot of authentic details. That's because, again, big part of it remained. And now that we are now closer to the southern side of the Temple Mount, and we need to go around to the same direction of the Eastern Gate. But you see, we had to turn right as once we took the steps, we turned right. Now we're going around, and as you go around, I'll just briefly would like to draw your attention to an interesting vault, small arch, which had definitely at some point was sealed. Some specialists, and Linwood Mayer himself, also believe this could have been the spot where the Levites kept their musical instruments. Because we know that the Levites in the Second Temple period, in the First Temple period, they needed they performed music, right? They needed they had spaces, especially in the Second Temple period. They were given a lot of space because Herod enlarged it. So the Levites had special storage rooms for the musical instruments. And who knows, there must be a lot of archaeology underneath those stones. And but it's just an assumption. As I said, here we can only guess. But now you see, I'm speeding things up a little bit. We need to go around, and right now to the right-hand side is going to be the southern side of the Temple Mount. But we need to go around, and we're coming now towards the Eastern Gate. But what I want you to see is this mess. The olive trees, yes, and also the mess. Look at all this rubble and debris. No, nothing had been destroyed. Nothing was destroyed. No, 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 no. This is the most important and inaccessible pile of stones and rubbish and soil. And the thing is, once it's on the territory of the Temple Mount, you cannot touch it. Nobody can touch it. No archaeology, no carbon 14 dating analysis, nothing can be done because no archaeology is allowed on the Temple Mount. But what on earth is this doing here? I'm using different videos that I filmed over this period of like almost 3 years. So yeah, 3 years. And well, this is interesting. So on the one hand, we have the third most sacred place for Muslims all over the world, undoubtedly. On the other hand, there is this rubbish. What is going on? Is there any construction work, or are there any excavations? Well, for those who have seen my previous tours, well, from also the tours I did back like several years ago, you may remember the interesting event, and also for my Israeli friends, it's a well-known fact. So what is going on here? Now let me just show you this layout of the city. Once again, the plan. I want you to have a look at the Temple Mount and to the very, very southern end of it where it's written the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I know I don't have a pointer here, and it's like, well, what can I say? I had to sacrifice that for the better image quality. And we are now going to be focusing on this part that ends on the southern edge of the Temple Mount. And also outside of the Temple Mount, there is an area, it's called Ha'ofel, right? So just keep that in mind. This is just actually what we need to focus on at the moment. And I will be going into details. So by the way, what is this? What is the Ofel? So Ofel is this area uh, immediately after the walls, the southern wall of the Temple Mount. So you see there's kind of a division, right? And to the right-hand side from this wall division is the Ha'ofel area. But now I want to take you back to the Temple Mount and to this very flat platform in the southern edge, which is basically the lowest right uh, corner of the Temple Mount. You see it's super flat. And also you can see that a little bit higher up there is northwards. There are steps and they clearly going underground. And there are also some sort of windows, right? There's something going on there. So that's the connection with this rubble. And you see the pile in this photo. You see the pile. It's huge. It's enormous. Well, because this is the soil that was dug out from the Temple Mount, from the area that is referred to as the Solomon Stable. So, in fact, that super flat area is the roof of the Solomon Stables. So what is Solomon Stables? This term was originated in the Crusader period, so after 1099 Common Era, and since for the temples for the Crusaders, the entire Temple Mount was the Solomon's Temple of Solomonis. So everything there was also called after Solomon because, well, they were quite right anyway, and they identified that area as even Solomon's stables, and they had their stables there too. So Crusaders had their stables over there. As I said, they used Temple Mount not as a sacred place. No, it was just their headquarters. Al-Aqsa Mosque was their headquarters, and obviously they needed to have their garage. So the stables were over there. And in In 1099, oh sorry, in in 1999, and now what the video that I filmed for us this August, September, I'm actually heading towards the area where the roof of the Solomon Stables is. So in 1999, the Muslim Authority decided to build a Marwani mosque. Well, but they could not really build anything on top of it, but they started digging the space uh, in those Solomon stables, and they started digging without any permission, without any prior agreement with well, even though Waqf is in charge of it as a religious site, but it's property of the State of Israel anyway. Yes, and there had to be special procedure. There had to be always, as usual, salvage excavation before every construction. Wherever you build in Israel, you need to get the permission, and first you have to carry out the salvage excavations. That's how it goes. Nothing was coordinated. Nobody was informed. They just started digging. And so exactly where I am walking now, I'm walking above the Marwani Mosque that had been the Solomon stables during the Crusader period, 1,000 years ago. If I come closer, and we'll have a look into well through the slits, you will see the offal or ha'offal, and I'm going to share some photographs now. I mean, it's a great view. You can from there you can also see even the city of David. Well, this is the Ha'ophel area, which consists of dozens and dozens of mikvaot that have been discovered there by archaeologists, mostly in the 20th century. But there was also something done even earlier. A lot had been discovered earlier, obviously, and so that's just this. Well, that area. The photo is taken from, well, it must be a drone image. Well, anyway, but the photo is taken somewhere from the Mount of Olives. You now have the idea. So there's very, very flat space. These are the Solomon stables, the roof of the Solomon stables. This is the Aha Ophel. So, and if you go south, so if you go down from the Ha'ophel, this is where the city of David actually is. So the Ha'ophel area was sort of the connection between the Temple Mount and the city of David. So the very, very first Jerusalem, which wasn't even on the territory of the old city. That's a bit later period, but nevertheless, yeah. So what we know is that in that Marwani mosque, in that first of all Solomon stables, there was a huge space. There were vaulted arches, like 13 vaults with the 12 rows of pillars. This is the enormous space of the former Solomon stables from the Crusader period. And it was all filled up with dirt, debris, well, the most important, archaeologically absolutely priceless, precious dirt. And well, that's the photos I found online. So it's just a praying space. This is the footage that was also aired on TV. That was a big scandal when it all surfaced. It was a huge scandal, and but they had to somehow get rid of this debris. And so what the Muslim authorities did, the builders did, they took about 350 trucks loaded with dirt, and they just dropped it in the Kidron Valley, right behind the Eastern Gate. Just imagine that. So in the valley from the eastern side of the old city. Well, this is just some footage, for you to have an idea. And the photo to the right, well, it's taken already from the level of the entrance to the Marwani Mosque, the former Crusader period Solomon's tables. Yeah, so the photo to the right is this pile of the debris outside of the old city. It kind of goes on in the Kidron Valley, and since this is no longer the Temple Mount, you can dig, you can collect, you can do whatever you want with that. And once it became a public knowledge, obviously, well, something had to be done. Actually, it took another 5 years for the Israeli archaeologists Gabi Barkai and Tahi Dvira from Bar Ilan University. It took them 5 more years, so maybe if not 6 years, to get a permission from the Court of Israel to actually take these rubble, and they took it. They took all of it, and by that moment, the Muslims realized that they actually could no longer dispose of this debris outside of the Temple Mount because they didn't want anyone to touch the stones because they don't want them to know it, to find out anything. They don't want them to discover anything, and well, that's why the rest of the rubble is kept on the Temple Mount because you can't dig there because you can't take it, you can't do anything. That's the story, basically. So what decided to be done, what they decided to do with the debris that they have been able to take from the Kidron Valley, this is when the sifting project started, and anyone can participate. So basically, well, one of the important thing in archaeology is just digging in layers because the archaeological layers they accumulate with time, right? And layers are very important. If you don't follow the layers, you will just totally destroy the chronology. Obviously, the chronology was totally destroyed. It was all just upside down, messed up, mixed up. So no, well, it's not, it's just, it was a disaster from that point of view. But other than that, everything was in there. And so basically first it is sifting. It's just exactly sifting. You have a big sieve and you sift all the contents of these buckets. You just take it in buckets, you see, and then you sift. And then also there was design so-called wet sifting. So after that, there was also water poured on the sieve. And after the debris are washed off, well, there, well, what is left there is um, well, the finds. So technically, anyone can become an archaeologist for the day. And what have been found? A lot of seals from the first temple period, containing the names of the priests and personalities that were mentioned in the first temple period. Lots of interesting tiles. And we know from Josephus Flavius, the historian, that the floors in the Herod's temple, the floors of the courts of the Herod's temple were decorated with the colored tiles of different shapes. Now, seeing these stones of different shapes and different colors, now remember the wall of the well of souls, right? Remember the cave of souls, right? With this mosaic under the carpet, and like, I mean, mm, and now you see this at the entrance to the city of David. So it's no wonder that several archaeologists kind of put two and two together. A lot of scholars, a lot of archaeologists put two and two together. And with all that findings, since there was no archaeology before that, before the sifting project, they couldn't really tell what those mosaics could be. I mean, under the dome of the rock. But now having all these beautiful small mosaic pieces, stone details, well, they just having all that on their hands, they decided to recreate the possible patterns. And I mean, it looks so very similar to what is there under the carpets in the under the dome of the rock. Well, there was a lot more. They were found different Crusader period coins, obviously, the stamps, of course. Well, because it was all mixed up, no way to really date it if there is no any subsequent information there. So, but no layering. But obviously, you can date it by the way it is, by the way it looks, and also remains from the First and the Second World Wars, all different items, a lot from the Roman period. So what can I say? Yeah, so just in case, so Lynn Rittmeyer is exactly the I would say this book, The Quest Revealing the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This is the Bible, I would say, of archaeologists and tour guides. Um, and goodness gracious, there is so much in there. And I always go through this book. I have it like an electronic version, and there is a lot of information online. Will Whitmer has his website. You can find tons of information there, tons of visual aids and schemes and whatnot. I mean, it's like really good stuff. And so that's a very important book. Anyone interested in the history of the three monotheistic religions, in the anyone who is doubting the existence for some well, if there is still a space for doubt, which probably there is always space for doubt, anyone has to read that. There are also assumptions that maybe the first temple was not located on the Temple Mount, but maybe in the Siege of David. But the archaeologists totally smashes that idea at all. So in the Lee and Rittmeyer's book, you have it all. Now, well, I promise to speak more of the extensions and the archaeology of the Temple Mount itself, not just Al-Aqsa Mosque, not just the Dome of the Rock and the poor Solomon's tables. There is a lot more. So, orange color, Solomon's platform, right? Then there were several other expansions. So in the Hasmonean period, that is 130 BCE, something, so second century BCE. Then the green one, this is the Herod expansion. So what you see, Herod also did not do anything with the eastern wall because there is a Kidron Valley. There was nowhere to extend it to the east, right? So he just kept it as it was, but he extended it significantly. And from the other three sides, as you see, there were extensions. There was a little extension to the west from the original Solomon platform, and from the Hasmonean expansion in yellow, he also extended it even way south. And the red one is the Antonia Fortress, which is going to be a separate topic of the discussion. That's also Herodian period fortress. Very important also for the Christian narrative, like absolutely important. So this is where I use a lot of Holy Land sites, visual aids, and well, when I was planning these videos, it takes hours to put together everything I have, especially if I use also a lot of additional photographs and schemes and maps and whatnot. And I cannot but use them, and I want to use them, but because I don't have the pointer, this is kind of really challenging. So I try to, and since I don't have the resources and time, to draw everything myself, so I just use everything that is available in the open sources. So thank you so much, Holy Land site, for that. So this is kind of for you to see, different, how shall I say, different sites on the Temple Mount. And well, so where it marks start, that's basically the universal start. So because the start is actually where the Mughrabi gate is. And depending on your itinerary, you can actually, you're free to go however you want. But the classic itinerary would, well, first you have to stop over here. And yeah, well, normally you just pass by, and to the right hand side is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and then you just don't pay much attention to all these rectangles, all these stones, standing out and jutting, from here and there. But if you have a closer look over here, um, well, I want you to pay attention to the trash bin and to the two layers of stones that kind of separate the floor level, right? And this little bit of the I don't know, lawn, kind of. It's not doesn't really look like a lawn, but it is in a way. So you see that the upper level of the two levels of the stones, two layers. So the first layer is definitely very new, but the lower one is much darker and much older. So actually, Linwood Mayer in his book believes that exactly here, well, there is also some more, how shall I put it? There is more evidence that actually these walls, well, these stones, I mean, they actually show us the layout of the Solomon's period platform, Solomon's platform. And Linwood Mayer did a lot of calculations, did a lot of measurements, and he had his tools and he had written monuments and written descriptions of the measurements of the Solomon's platform. And we know not from Solomon period resources, but from a later sources, we know that the measurements of the Solomon platform, all the sides were 500 cubits in length. That is 861 feet or 262 meters. There's no way I can remember that, so I just put these conversions here. You know how hopeless I am with them. And let me explain what kind of sources those are. For me, it's very important. I just don't take anything for granted. So if it says 500 cubit, who said it's 500? And what is cubit? Okay, let's discuss that. So in Ezekiel, well, there are several sources, but mainly two of them. So in the book of Ezekiel, it says that the measuring of the entire compound, so of the Solomon period, was 500 cubit on each of the four sides. So 500 by 500 cubit. So that was the square to separate the holy from the common. Well, that's one source, the book of Ezekiel. And another source is the Mishnah, basically. We're talking about the Second Temple period, actually, the very end of the Second Temple period. Mishnah is the collection of unwritten laws and different traditions that originally were put into writing so that the diaspora in exile had some written source just to to protect, to save their identity. So the Mishnah was written, and there it is also said in the Midot. It's one of the tractates that the Temple Mount Harabait was the square of 500 cubits. So the Temple Mount was 500 cubits by 500 cubits. That's basically it. So Midot. You can find this information. I mean, it's just quote from the Midot, from the tractate. What is the cubit? Okay, so this is also, I think, quite challenging to explain. So a cubit is basically, let's just imagine we have the arm of an adult, of a man. Actually, cubit is from the elbow till here. But there is also a sacred cubit or the royal cubit, which is the entire length from here, right, from the elbow to the middle finger, and just also this part of the palm. That is it. It's called kind of a royal or sacred cubit, and just believed to be exactly the cubit that was used during the Solomon period, right? So you have all this information, and it's somewhat 20 inches. or 525 millimeters, just to have an idea. And having this in mind, Lindgren Mayer did all the measurements and calculations, and he was able to identify that on the surface of the Temple Mount there are still the stones that are the remnants of the platform from the first temple period, and each side is exactly 500 royal cubits long. Ah, I mean, what? Yes, yes. Um, Yep, I think this is where we're going to wrap it up for now because it's already midnight my time, and I know we skipped the Q&A. But so what I want us to see, um, basically what we're going to be doing in the upcoming tour, well, the one that's already scheduled, and you can find it on the chat, and I will be also adding it again once I wrap up and open the chat for questions. So we're going to be walking around the Temple Mount. Now that we have seen Al-Aqsa Mosque, Temple Mount, Solomon's Tables, the Eastern Gate, in most cases, that's all that tourists get to see. But there is so much more. And I'm going to be abusing your attention and your time. I want to show you as much as I can because it's there. It's on the surface. You don't even need to dig because Lynette Meyer had already done a lot of work. I would say really like heavy lifting. It was like really, really, really heavy duty that he did for us. And we're going to just read the stones. So stones can speak. And that's what we're going to be doing, reading and talking to the stones. And I am not crazy here. Okay. So this is it for now. I hope that it's been a good enough, teaser for the next tour. And well, the chat is open for your questions. So let me know if I mean you must have some. I will try to I will try to answer them. And if I can't answer today, I'll come up with something for the next time. In the meantime, this is the schedule. Some tour recordings are available. My live streams are available. The next episode. Uh, Is anyone in the waiting room? The waiting room is disabled. I don't know who is in the waiting room. There's no one in the waiting room. No. Hello, those who joined us a little later. Um, hello. No, there's no one in the waiting room. No, no, no. I made sure every time before every tour I make sure I disable the waiting room because it has happened to me before. No, it was a bad joke, dear, because I always freak out. Oh no, have I done it again? Did I do it again? No, 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 no. Okay. So anyway, um, the next episode, December 7th, same time, we are meeting here for the fifth episode. Yes. Did you say that there was possibly a mikveh in Al-Aqsa Mosque? Yes, Robert, that's exactly what I said, but it was not in Al-Aqsa Mosque per se. It was in the multiple, well, it was below. So after that earthquake, the roof collapsed, so they needed to repair the roofs, and they also decided to secure the columns and to fortify them. So they did a lot of digging. They dug out, the soil. They took off the floors, because they needed to, well, to secure the base of the columns. So yes, they found. I shared photographs on the previous tours. I just decided not to waste time on that because this is just part of the recap. But I always add something on top of it. But anyway, so there are photographs provided in the report. It's like 300 something pages report for us, left by the British scholars. Um, and what among many other photographs, there were photographs of the steps, and the steps, they were only partially surface, partially dug out. The rest was covered in the soil. But what was uh, uh, discovered, those were steps, and the steps had a division that looks very similar to the division that you find in the mikvaot, in the purification baths, because there is a division. So the division for those who are on their way to the purification, and those who are already pure, and they couldn't touch each other because they would immediately become impure again. So, yeah, that's what I said exactly. It looks very much like a mikveh, but because there was no archaeological excavation carried out, there was just the building going on. They were just building. So it's hard to say, but it looks very, very, very similar to mikvaot. Yes. Alexa, Alexa. Yeah. Dolores, thank you so much for the tips. Mark, thank you so much for the coffee as well. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope it hasn't been too nerdy. And I mean, archaeology is never boring, honestly. Well, I mean, it is. I mean, it's very long and it's a lot of dirt and everything and the manicure ruin. But the discoveries on the Temple Mount, I mean, you don't even need to dig. There is so much on the surface and you just, I don't know, how can you not, how can, I mean, not you, but just, how can one not notice that? So yeah, basically, I would say it's just fascinating. What can I say? So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. You have all the links available, and thank you for your donations. On my website, you can find many more links, many more tours already up for December, but I'm going to add more. And I'm going to be, as usual, sending you newsletters, someone in the middle of the week with the updated schedule, with the recordings as of this week, and I have not been able to put up any of them yet. So there is a lot that I need to do. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your interest in my tours, be it Tbilisi, be it St. Petersburg, be it Jerusalem. Yes, and obviously, well, these tours of the Temple Mount, it's not saying that Muslims are wrong or Crusaders were right or whatever. No, it's just about the archaeology at a very important site, and that's basically it. Thank you, and bye bye.